Hello there. Today we are going to be talking about Bo Burnham's song From God's Perspective. So this is a little bit different. Most of the time we've been breaking down songs based on their cinematography and sometimes their themes and things. This one, because there's not a lot going on with the visuals, this one is going to be almost entirely commentary and my thoughts about the ideas that Bo shares in this song. I'm not going to lie, this is the one that I have been the most excited and the most nervous to do. Excited because obviously I love Bo Burnham, and I'm also a Christian, and so I also am a huge Bible nerd, and so this song brings those two things together, which is fun. Nervous because I know that some of the things I have to say may be things that people disagree with, or things like that. And just because my faith is really important to me, it's a little bit scary to be kind of so vulnerable and be sharing about that part of my life publicly. So please, I'd love to hear your guys' discussion of the ideas that I share in this video, but, just please be kind, go easy on me. Just so you guys know, again, I am a huge Bo Burnham fan, so even though I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says in the song, I do really respect him and his ideas that he shares, and think that they're really worthy of discussion. And so, no shade will be thrown at Bo in this video. If you're a Christian and you're watching this, and you're unfamiliar with Bo and his work, I just want to give you a little disclaimer warning that there is a lot of mature content in this song, and so if that's something that you're not comfortable with, this is probably not the video for you. But also another disclaimer, this is my amateur thoughts. I am not formally trained in theology. My degrees are in TESOL and library science, not anything theological. I do not have an MDiv or a D anything, okay? So, but I have grown up in a church where I just had a lot of really good Bible teachers throughout the years. I'm personally interested in theology, and so I've kind of just done study on my own, and then also had to take a few Bible classes at the Christian college that I attended for my undergrad. So, amateur, but something that I really enjoy studying and talking about. But otherwise, I think we're going to dive in. So this is going to be, from God's perspective, from this Christian's perspective. And let's see what Bo has to say in the song.
There's things that I don't want to come across in my show that I worry often come across about me, because people don't realize that it's an act up here. I don't want you to ever think that I think I'm better than people, or that I think I know better than people. Anyway, sorry. Okay. This is a song from the perspective of God.
I love that. It's just such a great opener. And actually, we talked about it very briefly in our last video on the chicken, which I will put a card here for if you didn't see that one. Because he starts out and you feel like maybe he's being very serious and genuine. Maybe later. It might be later in this show that he does something similar before repeat stuff where he is being genuine. And so he wants us to, as the audience, to know that he doesn't want to, he doesn't want us to think that he feels superior to us or anything like that. But really, and that's probably true, but really in this instance, it's just a setup for the joke then of, I don't think I'm better than other people, but I do think I understand how God thinks, and let me tell you, let me tell you this song from the perspective of God. So it's a really funny way to start off the song, I think.
Books you think I wrote are way too thick. Who needs 1,000 metaphors to figure out you shouldn't be a dick?
All right, off to a funny start already. So the books you think I wrote are way too thick. So first of all, again, this song is obviously talking about all sorts of different religions. I only have enough experience or authority to talk about the Bible. I'm not familiar enough with the Quran or other sort of religious texts, the Book of Mormon, or any other text, sacred text from other religions. So I'm just going to focus on the Protestant Bible because that's what I have to go on. So the books you think I wrote are way too thick. The Bible is a huge volume of text for sure. But the thing is, even though sometimes we call it the good book, it would actually be more accurate to call it an anthology because it's not really one book. It's actually 66 books written by about like 40-ish authors, I think, over the span of about like 1,500 years. So, and in all sorts of genres, right? You have like history books, you have poetry, you have laws, you have some almost like building manual sort of things, you have biographies, prophecies, a lot of letters in the New Testament, something called apocalyptic literature, which doesn't mean what you think it does. And so all sorts of smaller works combined into this bigger sort of anthology that is the Bible. So none of those individual books is really that thick. Like each one of them on its own is pretty small compared to other writings. But yes, when you put them all together, very large piece of text. The books you think I wrote are way too thick. Who needs 1,000 metaphors to figure out you shouldn't be a dick? Again, very funny, but I do think it's a little bit of a misnomer. I think a lot of people have this idea of the Bible as like a to-do manual, like a list of rules that just tells you here's what you should do and here's what you shouldn't do, right and wrong and all of that kind of stuff. And while that's obviously in there, that's not the primary purpose of the Bible. Truly, the purpose of the Bible is to tell the story of God's creation of and interaction with and eventual redemption and restoration of the world. Specifically through the people of ancient Israel. So it's really kind of telling that story. And while there are some things in it that are a lot of things that are prescriptive, meaning it is prescribing how you should live, there's a lot of it that's also just descriptive, meaning it's just describing to you what happened. And a lot of times the things that it's describing that happened are not things that it's telling you you should then go do likewise. Sometimes they are kind of non-examples of how we shouldn't live, right? And you really kind of have to study the whole thing kind of in its own context and things like that to really figure out which are which and, sort through all of that. It's a very complicated work of writing. So, yes, but again, very, very funny start.
And I don't watch you when you sleep. Surprisingly, I don't use my omnipotence to be a fucking creep.
Whenever I hear this line, I think back to my teenage days when I am sad to admit, a huge Twilight fan and did not realize until much later how kind of creepy it was that he would watch her while she slept. And so I think people talk about like, it's creepy that Santa Claus, knows what you're doing when you're sleeping or he sees you when you're sleeping or whatever. And that's creepy, right? And so a lot of times we apply that same thing to God. But I think if we were to think of God as more like our Heavenly Father, as some people refer to him, then I think it's not quite as creepy if you think about like a dad sitting by his kid's bed or his like toddler's crib or whatever and just watching them peacefully sleep and kind of lovingly appreciating them. That's not that creepy, right? Again, not that I'm saying that God is actually literally sitting there watching you while you sleep. Again, I don't think that's, as Bo says, strictly how he's using his omnipotence. But maybe not so creepy when you think about it from that perspective of a loving father who is appreciating his creation, really.
You're not going to heaven. Why the fuck would you think I'd ever kick it with you? None of you are going to heaven. There's a trillion aliens cooler than you.
I love that line. I think that is so funny. And to be honest, I'm not able to say with like 100% confidence that I don't think aliens exist. Like if I had to place a bet, I'd say no, I don't really think they do. But like it would not completely change my worldview if we found out that there was life on other planets. Because again, just because the Bible doesn't tell us about God creating life on other planets or in other universes or whatever, doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It's not the Bible's intention to be able to answer every single one of our little questions about the world and about the universe. That's not its purpose, as we've just discussed. So who knows? Maybe there are a trillion aliens out there cooler than us. I don't know. But the first part of that phrase is more important, right? Where he says, why would you think that I would want to kick it with you? And on this point, I completely agree with him. Like, I think because our culture has been soaked in Christianity for so long, the idea of like a loving personal God who like wants to have a relationship with us has become so normalized that we forget that in the ancient world, like truly today still, the idea that the God of the universe, the guy who created the entire universe, would want to hang out with us should be completely ludicrous and insane, right? So I think I give Bo a lot of props for that point, because I think that's very astute of him. Like, that's true. The fact that God would want to hang out with us should blow our minds. Now, I believe that he does, in fact, want to hang out with us, and that's the whole reason for sending Jesus and all of that kind of stuff. But that idea should be crazy to us. Like, back in the ancient world, and that's why the Jewish people said that they like loved God's law and stuff, which seems weird to us today, but it's because for most of the ancient world, the gods were distant and far, and they, they had to just kind of blindly offer sacrifices or things to try to appease them when things were going badly, and they never knew what the gods wanted from them. But the Jewish God was different. The Jewish God said, no, here's exactly what I want from you. Here's exactly, what you can do to be in good relationship with me and all that kind of stuff. And so he was a God that was present and was close and actually cared, which was, again, mind-blowing back in the day, and really should be mind-blowing for us today still.
You shouldn't abstain from rape just because you think that I want you to. You shouldn't rape because rape is a fucked up thing to do. Pretty obvious, just don't fucking rape people. Do you think I had to write that one down for you?
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong, right? And I think we can all agree that he's right about that. I do think it's interesting, though, that he brings this up, because I've always heard the idea that we have a kind of a somewhat shared moral compass, that there are some things that we can all agree are morally right and wrong and things like that, does almost point to the fact that there would be a higher power who would, like, whether it's God or not, that would have been the origin of that moral compass. Because otherwise, without that, like, who's to say? How do we know that things are objectively right and wrong, and that good and evil do objectively exist? Which, So I don't think that's necessarily what he's trying to argue with that, because from what I understand, at least at this point, Bo would definitely have considered himself more either atheistic or possibly agnostic, but. The fact that, that we can all agree that some things are just wrong and we shouldn't have to be told that, right? To me, at least, kind of points to a higher power that put that into place, and not necessarily something that just evolved with us. Because some things, like not murdering somebody, that would, from an evolutionary perspective, be helpful. Like our species can't continue if we're just murdering each other all the time. But other things like rape and other things don't make sense from that explanation. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. But yes, there are things that we should not have to be told are wrong. We should just instinctively know that.
I don't think masturbation is obscene. It's absolutely natural and the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Okay, we're going to go there. All right, we're going to spend a couple minutes here talking about the theology, as I understand it, of masturbation. So, buckle up. If I can figure out how to do like segments on the video, maybe I'll, make this a chapter that you can skip past if you don't want to hear this. But I think it's important to talk about. So, because I think a lot of our culture, we know that like Christianity has certain like rules and things, especially related to sex, and we talk about like there's just things that you just shouldn't do that, but we don't talk about why. Like, why do we think we shouldn't do that? So, I do think that God has a problem with masturbation, that it's something that he doesn't want us to do, but I don't think it's for the reason that Bo states. I don't think that it's necessarily something that he finds obscene, more like a cheap knockoff of the way that he actually designed for us to enjoy our sexuality. Because from a Christian worldview, God is the inventor of sex, right? He's the one who created it. He's the one who gave us that as a gift. And so it's not something that he finds inherently like dirty or gross or anything like that, right? But as the person who created it, he also knows how it is best used for our flourishing and our own mental, emotional, spiritual health, right? So in a Christian worldview, the purpose of sex is not just like, something that I can get out of it, just a means for like self-gratification or, it's not meant for me. It is really meant partially as like a metaphor for God and God's love, because both God's love for his people and sex, talk about faithfulness is a big thing, right? It's also about intimately knowing and accepting the other person and being intimately known and accepted in return. And it's about giving yourself to someone else, right? It is fundamentally something that should involve two people in order for it to be used in the way that God intended it to. And so masturbation cuts that completely out of the equation and makes it purely about self-gratification. And so, so I think that is maybe more the reason why God says that that's not something that people who are trying to follow his way of life should be doing. Also, on a total side note that I won't go into too much, but there's also a strong link, especially in our modern culture, between masturbation and pornography. And I do have some issues with pornography as far as the effect that it has on us. And I'm not gonna go too far into it because I don't have time for that, but I will put a link in the description to a group called Fight the New Drug that is a completely non-religious, completely secular organization that has studied the effects of pornography on society on both like an individual and a societal level, and talks about like all the reasons that it is harmful to us. And so, earlier in this special, right, we had the beating off in A minor part where Bo is both watching porn and masturbating. And so I think that's another reason that it's just not good for us to have. I think it hinders us from having the most healthy sex lives with another person that we can have. So there you go. That was my little explanation of my understanding of the theology of masturbation. So if you tuned out for that part, welcome back. We're gonna move on now.
You make my job a living hell. I send gays to fix overpopulation. Boy, did that go well.
Okay. Because I just spent an eternity talking about the worldview of sex and masturbation from the Christian perspective, I am not going to go into the theology of homosexuality in this video, but I do think it's really important to stop here and say that if you are a member of the LGBTQ community and you have ever had anybody bully you, say hateful things to you, anything like that, because they're a Christian and because they believe that what you're doing is a sin, I just want you to know that I am so sorry that that happened to you, and there is no biblical justification for anyone ever treating another human being made in God's image in that way. Okay, so if that has happened to you, just know that they were not being a good representation of Jesus when they did that. And that is not kind of behavior that God finds acceptable. And yeah, again, I am really sorry if that has happened to you. So again, we're not going to go too far into that. I love Bo's kind of explanation of like a reason why God might have made gay people would be to help with overpopulation. I think that's really creative and something I had just never would have crossed my mind. But yeah, so we're going to leave that there for now. But I thought that was important to take a minute to say.
You're not going to heaven. Eat 1,000 crackers, sing 1,000,000 hymns. None of you are going to heaven. You're not my children. You're a bad game of Sims.
Okay, so obviously, if you don't know, eating 1,000 crackers refers to the taking of communion, singing 1,000 hymns, something that happens in a lot of church services. And so his point being, right, and which I completely 100% agree with him on, is that you cannot gain God's favor. You cannot like earn your way to heaven or something by eating 1,000 crackers, singing 1,000,000 hymns. Things like going to church and reading your Bible and praying and doing all those kind of things. Those are good things to do. Like I believe they help you kind of grow in your faith and get closer to God and to other people in like a community of a church body. But those things cannot earn your way to heaven, right? Those things, it's not like a transactional thing where like I'm just gonna do this and then therefore I'm gonna earn God's favor and he's gonna bless me and I'm gonna like be on his good side now. That is not how it works, okay? And so I think Bo's being critical, and rightly so, of people who think that and who live like that I don't really have to treat other people well or do whatever. I can just show up at church on Sunday, take communion, sing a hymn, and then I'm good to go. And it doesn't actually impact the rest of my life outside of those four walls of the church building. And then he says, you're not my children, you're a bad game of Sims, which is funny. I miss The Sims. I used to play that when I was a kid, and it's been a long time. I did hear an interview once of Bo talking about how at that point, at least, it's been a long time since he gave that interview, but so I'm not sure if something has changed, but at that point he actually didn't believe that humans have free will. He kind of thought of it almost like a game of Sims where just every decision that we make is influenced by our own experiences and our background and the way we were raised, and all of that kind of goes into the choices that we make, and we don't really have true free will in what we're doing, which is interesting, and which is what some philosophers and people think. And there's kind of been to some extent kind of a debate amongst Christians as well, something called Calvinism and Arminianism, which is more complicated, but a segment of that is kind of trying to figure out the extent to which humans have free will and the extent to which we're just always destined to do what we're going to do or whatever. So I think that's a really interesting idea that I don't really have a good answer to. But if you don't believe in free will, then yes, I guess, God, it really would just be like a big game of Sims.
You shouldn't abstain from pork just because you think that I want you to. You can eat pork, because why the fuck would I give a shit? I created the universe. Think I'm drawing the line at the fucking deli aisle?
Okay, so obviously this part is more focused at Jewish people, and I believe Muslims have a similar practice as well. I'm not sure if they come from the same origin, because Islam is also an Abrahamic faith, like both Christians, Jews, and Muslims all trace back to Abraham, and so I'm not sure if they have a similar reasoning or not, but I know at least for Jewish people, there are different dietary laws and things like that in the Old Testament, which are it's way too complicated to get into in this video, but certain dietary restrictions that they're supposed to follow, and one of those being not eating pork. And a lot of Jewish people and Muslim people, I believe, still follow that today. As Christians, we believe that some of those Old Testament laws were not necessarily done away with, but sort of like their purpose was fulfilled in Jesus. And so then therefore going forward, things like the sacrificial system and things like that, we didn't need to practice anymore because Jesus' death on the cross had already kind of fulfilled the purpose that those old laws were trying to fulfill. And so we think it's totally fine to eat pork. So, I agree with him on that one, at least, for sure. Okay, and did you notice he stops there and he does literally kind of just stop playing for a second, kind of takes a deep breath, and now he's going to continue in a totally different kind of posture than he was before. And part of it's probably because he's stopping because they're clapping and whatever, and he doesn't want them to miss what he's going to say next. But part of it is that this is something that Bo does all the time, right? Where his songs are often very comedic and things like that, but at some point in the song it usually takes a turn and starts to be more serious. And so I think this is the part of the song where he's kind of done with, even though he was making kind of some serious points towards the beginning, he was doing it through comedy and it was primarily funny. But now this next part I think is going to be him going into the more serious parts of what he actually wants us to take away from what he's saying. So yes, let's see what that is.
You argue and you bicker and you fight. Atheists and Catholics, Jews and Hindus argue day and night over what they think is true. But no one entertains the thought that maybe God does not believe in you.
Such a good line. That is one of my favorite lines from this whole song, and I know a lot of you Bo Burnham fans agree with me. Bo is just a master at playing with language and different meanings for doing different plays on words. Again, I cannot figure out the plural of that phrase. Different kind of like double meanings and things. And so in English, to believe in something can mean believe in its actual existence, or it can mean a more metaphorical sense, believing in something like you support them, you have faith in them, you believe that they can do it, right? I believe in you. And so when he says, you argue and you bicker and you fight, and I love that he includes all sorts of religions in that, Hindus, Catholics, atheists even. You argue and you bicker and you fight, but no one entertains the thought that maybe God does not believe in you. And he doesn't mean believe in your literal existence, because obviously if there's a God and he created us, he knows we exist. But more so in no one stops to entertain the thought that maybe God is not supportive of us. Maybe God is not on our side in everything. Maybe God does not have faith that we can do it, or whatever that means, which I think is such a good point. Like, I do think there are Christians, especially that I think are the main ones that he's being critical of in this song, who think that because I'm a Christian, that means that God's always on my side, right? Like, me and Jesus are tight, and so if I think this about something, God must think that too, and so he's going to support me in everything I do, and he's going to, agree with all the decisions I make and all this kind of stuff. And that is often not the case, right? Like, we need to be more critical of our actions and our words, and whether or not what we're doing is actually reflective of the way God wants us to live and the way God wants us to treat people, or whether we're just assuming that God's going to be cool with it because he believes in us. So I love that line. I think that is so great, and just genius the way that he phrased that, because it's a twist on our expectations, right? Of usually we say, do you believe in God? And maybe God does not believe in you. And so, yeah, definitely one of the best lines in the song.
You pray so badly for heaven, knowing any day might be the day that you die, but maybe life on earth could be heaven. Doesn't just the thought of it make it worth a try?
That is the other best line in the song. Because I do think that a lot of times Christians, a lot of us have kind of lost sight of that, the true mission Jesus left us with. Because a lot of times I think it becomes all about, getting to heaven. Like, we're so worried about what's going to happen after this life that we forget what we're supposed to be doing during this life, right? Because, and I think that's maybe why Christians have not been maybe as concerned about things like climate change, which sometimes we like to call creation care, about taking care of the world that God made for and left us in charge of. Because we think, well, it's not our final home, we're gonna go to heaven someday or whatever, and so it doesn't really matter. But that's not true. And actually, something that I think a lot of Christians also have misconceptions about is that technically the Bible does not say that we're going to spend eternity in heaven. It says that God is going to return to restore his original creation, and we spend forever on the new heaven and the new earth, right? Current earth, restored back and kind of upgraded back to the Garden of Eden, to the original glory that God intended it before we as humans screwed everything up. So I think, but I think Jesus when he left earth, the mission that he left for his people was to be bringing the kingdom of God here and now on earth, where it's not just about what happens later. It is about, meeting the needs of and serving the people who are vulnerable in our society, the people that deserve justice, like those are the kind of things that we are supposed to be doing, bringing about God's kingdom here on earth. And so life on earth should look a lot more reflective of heaven if Christians are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that is definitely worth a try. I give Bo a lot of props for this idea, these couple lyrics that he's just saying here. And I agree with him 100%. That should be where we are focusing more of our time and attention.
My love's the type of thing that you have to earn, and when you earn it, you won't need it. Oh, my love's the type of thing that you have to earn, and when you earn it, you won't need it.
Okay, guys, this is it. This is the one part that I actually have the biggest theological problem with. It is not all the seemingly more controversial stuff about masturbation and all of that. No, this is the part that I have the biggest problem with, when he says that God's love is a kind of thing that you have to earn, because actually, even though I think a lot of times we treat it like that, and people think that the point of Christianity is that there is right and wrong, and your good has to outweigh your bad, and like it's all about earning your way to heaven. That is complete heresy. That is the antithesis of the gospel. In fact, if you don't know, the word gospel literally just means good news, and so what that means, what the whole point is that as people who have like screwed up, we are actually incapable of earning God's love, because he is perfect and holy and all of that. And so there is nothing that we can do to earn God's love. Like, that is impossible. We are incapable of doing that, because we are weak, fallible, imperfect humans. But the gospel, the good news, is that through Jesus and his death and resurrection and all of that, God doesn't expect us to earn it. He gives it to us freely through those things. That it's something that we cannot earn, but luckily he doesn't expect us to. He gives it to us freely through Jesus anyways. So, the kind of thing that you have to earn. No, it breaks the idea that Bo or anyone else would think that they have to earn and be deserving of God's love completely breaks my heart. So I hope that's not what you think. But yeah, that part's just really heartbreaking to me. But yeah, no, you don't have to earn God's love. If you accept what Jesus did for you, then God gives it to you freely, right? That's the whole, gift that we get through Jesus. So yeah, that's the one thing that I have the most theological problem with out of everything that he said, because it's really important. And I think it's like, yeah, the biggest thing that people often don't understand like about what the Bible actually teaches. So yeah, so there's my little rant about that. Let's listen to how he finishes the song here.
I'm not gonna give you love just 'cause I know that you want me to. If you want love, then the love has gotta come from you.
There's really beautiful piano in this one too. So not going to give you love just because you think, just because I know that you want me to. Again, I think God does give us his love freely. And again, there's a whole lot of, I'm actually taking a class on Jesus and salvation right now. There's a whole lot. It's really actually kind of complicated as far as like how people couldn't earn God's love and how Jesus makes that possible and all of that kind of stuff that I can't get into in this video. But yeah, I don't think God's love is something that we have to earn, because we can't, but we also don't have to. But the if you want love, then the love has got to come from you part. Again, I think, yeah, totally just goes back to the fact that we should be more focused on how are we loving other people? How are we serving them? How are we working for the betterment of the people around us who, again, are in need or are vulnerable, or the people that we come into contact with every day? How are our actions and our words working to bring about the kingdom of heaven here on earth? And because I think, again, I don't think that Bo is being critical of like all religious people in this song. I know that he has said that even though, again, he himself does not believe in God unless something has changed since he wrote this, that he knows a lot of people, like had a lot of, teachers in school, or his mom who are believers and who are really smart, great people that he, still respects. But I think the main kind of people that he's critiquing through this song are the people that think that because they are religious, because they do performative acts of religion, like going to church and singing hymns and taking communion and all of that stuff, that then therefore because of that they are going to heaven and nothing else they do really matters, and they're free to treat people like gay people and other groups of people in a way that is not acceptable, because they just don't have, because they're good. They're, I'm tight with God and therefore I'm good. And it's like, no, you're not. That's not how that works. And so, again, even though there's a lot of things in here that on a theological level I disagree with or have like a different perspective than Bo on, I do really appreciate like the main point that he is trying to make in this song, and his call for us to all be more loving to each other. I think that that's really important. And again, I think that is the main takeaway that we are supposed to be taking from this song. So I hope that that encourages you to go and do likewise today, and really kind of practice what Bo was preaching right here. So yeah, so I think that was a lot, but I think that was kind of all of my thoughts on the song. Again, I do really appreciate the song and what he's trying to do through it. Yeah, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say as well. Again, I know that there will be lots of people, maybe who are not believers, who take issue with some of the things that I said. I know that there will be people who are Christians who will take issues with some of the things that I said or that Bo said. But again, I just ask that if you do choose to share your thoughts with me, I'd love to hear them. But yeah, practice what Bo is preaching, and let's keep it kind and civil and all of that. Yeah, and if there's any other songs or things by him that I haven't done yet that you would like me to break down, again, obviously this one there wasn't as much to talk about with the cinematography, but a lot to talk about with the ideas. feel free to let me know that too. But otherwise, I hope you guys have really enjoyed this kind of breakdown / more commentary this time. Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you again in another video really soon. As Bo would say, thank you for watching.